Okay, so hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to fellows all around the world. Welcome to this webinar on social entrepreneurship and international development. My name is David. I study chemistry at Imperial, and right now I'm actually in our chemistry department's building. So I'd also like you guys, if possible, to please kindly introduce yourselves live in the chat. So you can put things like your name, your country, where you study, university, and also perhaps like a brief project description. So like what goals you're advancing. If you also want, you can raise your hand and we can call on you. So you can, the world can know you better. And also preferably turn on the camera if you'd like. So there's not much update in the chat at the moment, but meanwhile I can like briefly describe my own project here. So we're currently we have a 8-member cohort, and then we're mostly advancing. We're doing research and educational content on microplastic, micro and nanoplastic. So I see people joining in. We have people from uh, doing engineering. We have people working on lots of different projects. So yeah. So anyways, so that like the project basically, like my project basically, like promotes awareness on micro nanoplastics, because these things are like bullets basically. Like we can't really see them, but they do lots of harm to the human system. And okay, there are more people joining in. So we also have some technology students studying technology, and I see someone advancing SDG 11 and 13. The project that I do advance SDG 6, which is clean water and sanitation, because we specifically target plastics and water. Uh, so yeah, like let's keep the introduction flowing in the chat, so people so like the networking can be enhanced. And it's quite interesting to see that people are joining in from different parts of the area of Earth, from Africa to India to so on to other regions. And yeah, it's really great to see people working from diverse backgrounds, working on the project, the fellowship, and also doing genuinely useful things outside of your own academia. And yeah, so meanwhile, whilst you're doing that, I think it's great to introduce our esteemed speaker today, Cristina. So a brief introduction. Cristina was born and raised in Bucharest, Romania, where she first engaged in youth empowerment through her nonprofit organization called Bucharest Youth League, and also an Erasmus International Youth Exchanges program. She graduated from the Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania, where her interest in entrepreneurship and development took her to Hong Kong, where I'm from. Actually, I was born in Hong Kong, Uganda, Moldova, and Ukraine. So whilst doing her degree, a master's degree at Tsinghua University in Beijing as a Schwarzman scholar, she conducted research on the challenges of senior female leaders in China and worked on multilateral development projects for the EU-China Partnership Office. Currently, she's working for Bain & Company in London in a private equity practice, focusing on decarbonization work, and was selected as a 2022 Forward delegate. Outside of her her day job, she's growing and scaling a startup called Feminist, an initiative advocating for financial literacy for women. So yeah, so lots of amazing info from chat. Uh, Hi Samantha, you're working on SDG 16 and breaking human trafficking. That's quite unique, I would say. I've never heard people doing that, but that's interesting. That's niche. That's good. And also SDG 12, mapping circular economy. Great, amazing. Right. So yeah, Christina, please, the stage is yours if you'd like to start your webinar.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me here. It's really a privilege to be with this year's Millennium Fellows. This is an extraordinary group of young people, and I can see that even from the messages, and I was trying to read through what you're working. Very, very, very exciting projects. So I'd love for the time we spend today to be something that's useful for you. So I'll spend a little bit of time telling you about my career, how I ended up doing the things that David very nicely put in the description, but also a little bit about the challenge that I'm having scaling this nonprofit that I'm working on at the moment, and how I've overcome some of those challenges, because I think that's probably relevant for a lot of the projects that you guys are working on. So I'll start there, and I'll try to introduce myself beyond the titles. I think oftentimes I've seen in many presentations people really focusing on that degree that they got, or that stamp of approval that they received by a certain grant or a certain certificate. I'm going to try and also tell you like who I am as a person and what are the things that I care about, because we are talking about purpose and mission and trying to put that into our lives as much as we can. And I'll try to keep it fairly short so that we can get to questions. I think it's always more interesting to try and answer things that you're curious to know about, rather than me talking about things that you're probably less interested in. So we'll start there. First and foremost, I'm Cristina. I was born in Romania and I grew up there. And I had a wonderful, wonderful upbringing that I think instilled a lot of these values in my life. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wasn't one of those kids that said, oh, I want to be an artist, or I want to be working in a startup, also because maybe I didn't know what that was really. But I was very curious, and that's one thing that hasn't changed to this day. I think beyond all the titles, it's like I'm a very curious person. So I find myself not following necessarily a linear path, but rather jumping from one thing to the other, and trying to learn about a variety of things. And when I was in high school, I had my first business. I was painting shoes, repainting shoes, and selling, old Converse or Vans shoes with some like creative designs on them. And that was the first time I did anything business related, but I liked it, and I thought, that's something that I want to continue doing in my life, or like learn more about business. And I think in my career, and I'll share a little bit of a timeline so you can follow along, there were a few things that I worked for, and they were received based on my work, and there were also a few things that just changed the course of my life that no, I didn't control necessarily. One of them being getting a scholarship to go study in the United States. So after high school, I had worked very hard and applied to universities, but it wouldn't have been easy for me to go to the US because of the cost primarily, if it wasn't for a scholarship. So I got this scholarship, and I ended up at a business school in the United States. And that was really where a lot of things opened up for me, or like a lot of paths that I'd never considered before. And I went there without a very clear idea of what I wanted to study, or what I wanted to do after I finished my studies. But I was interested in entrepreneurship, startups, and I was interested in doing it with some kind of social impact associated to it, because I've always wanted to bring back things to my community. I tried a lot of different things, and you'll see here. So the one thing that the American education had that was different, I'm sorry, I'm gonna unshare and take off the annotation. But the one thing that American education had that was a bit different was the ability to do internships. So I was able to try and work in different environments. So I worked as a teacher in Hong Kong on a summer internship. I worked on writing a paper in Moldova and Ukraine, and then I worked back home in Romania as well. So I got the chance to try doing a few different things. And then after all of the education and graduating from the university in the US, I got a second scholarship to go study in China as a Schwarzman scholar. And this is a one-year program to study global affairs and learn about China in the context of the world and learn about development and other topics that you're interested in, but becoming a little bit of an expert in one area, and spending a year in China learning about that more. So that's my background, that's my education. From there, I went into what I think is probably a less common path, which is I started both an NGO and I went into corporate at the same time because I used my corporate job to be able to, have a comfortable life and be able to work on my NGO without having to worry about earning money from that. So I used one avenue to secure and feel secure in my life in order to be able to develop something that I was passionate about. And both my first job and the NGO started at the same time. So they went in parallel. One was allowing for the other to happen, and I learned very much, a lot in my first corporate job, a lot of which I used in the NGO. I'll pause here on this part of the story with only one note on saying that I'm actually about to leave my first corporate job. So it's a very exciting moment. I'm about to go into a tech and take a different job, but the NGO will still be a very important part of my life and half of my that. What does the NGO do? So I picked something that was combining the education that I got and the knowledge that I acquired over the years, and was also something that I was interested in. I picked financial education as a topic. This is a bit on the statement of 80% of Romanians are not financially literate, and our NGO is trying to change that. And what is this NGO? So we are founded in Romania. We're promoting financial education among women primarily, but also underrepresented communities. And our goal is to create safe spaces where women can support one another and learn how to manage their money. I've got at the moment, actually, this is a bit outdated. So I've got over 50 volunteers working across Romania and outside of Romania, like myself. We've got just this month, we had more than 7 events in different places and hundreds of participants at these events. And you might ask, like, what is financial education? Why did I pick this? Well, financial education is the ability to understand and make informed decisions about your money. There's some examples here, like how to save, how to invest, how to avoid debt, and how to manage your personal budget. And then we also think it's an essential life skill, regardless of where you are in your career, regardless of where you are in your development. We do workshops from people as young as 14, 15, up until, there's no age limit to this. And this is about learning how to navigate everyday challenges, like rent, loans, savings, taxes, salaries. And why do we need this? We need this because most people make important financial decisions without having basic knowledge about the impacts. It's also a way to to have control over our money, and also an essential step in being independent financially. This is also an important issue because I feel like one thing that I didn't have as much, let's say, like conversations as I wanted to. I didn't feel prepared when I went into university and even when I got my first job on how to manage my own finances. And it's such an important topic that regardless, again, of where you are or where you are in your development, like it's going to be quite essential in order to unlock your ability to do other things. So this is in very short what I do with the NGO. I was able to leverage the corporate job and learn a lot about financial education there too, but also more generally, like it gave me the opportunity to test some of the things that I was learning, like how do you negotiate your first salary, how do you start investing when you're earning money, and also then how can you fund this NGO? Like that was the clear case study on okay, what have I learned about managing finances. So I was thinking of pausing here and opening it up for questions, because I would love to make this session as interactive and engaging as possible. I can go more deeply into corporate and talk about my current job. I can go more deeply into NGO and how that works on a day-to-day basis, but I'll pause here and I'll let your questions guide me.
Sure. So, thank you, Christina, for that wonderful presentation. So, just a few like short, brief like thoughts from me. I'd say, it's really good what you do, and it's like it's really inspiring because, for example, in your career path, you spend quite a lot of time working parallel both corporate and also your own NGO or your own startup. And I feel like this is going to be quite a common trend, or has already been quite a common trend in around the world, that people need to synergize and also complement them both. So since it's not just like financial support, as you said, but like you also mentioned things like transferable skills around the two. So that's really good. Like this is a really good practice or a technique to deploy. And yeah, and also financial management or financial education. I feel like not just for perhaps more underdeveloped or like rural or like regions or maybe like certain community, but I feel like general for everyone, like this is a really necessary skill. Like for example, for me, I've never personally really looked deep into the theories or etc. of financial management. All I knew was like don't spend on like uh unnecessary things and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's really useful and it's really general what you said. And uh so before moving on to well, I mean, like now we're gonna do the Q&A session, and I do have some questions for you if you don't mind before moving on to the to our fellows. So right, so well, let's start with your work with Feminist has been important to advocate for financial literacy among women, specifically in Eastern Europe. Working on issues like this can be difficult at times because they tend to involve some quite sensitive social and cultural issues. So, what would you say was the one learning that you keep in your mind, like the most important lesson that you learned, or the advice that you'd like to give people while working with communities? And what advice can you share with us that we should keep in mind as we work on issues like yours, which is like diverse and sensitive?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of the issues that were mentioned in the chat and that a lot of you are working on are sensitive. I say like when I started this, I started it very much with I'm an analytical mind, and all of my studies have been very analytical. So I thought, it's going to be really hard to get funding. It's going to be really hard, like logistically, to bring people together to work on this. No, the challenge is not that. The challenge is how do you approach a subject that is so personal, money, and it's even taboo in a lot of places. So how do you work around that sensitivity and make sure you do it in a way in which you're doing it to have empathy, but and you're putting that almost like before the expertise, like you're making people comfortable. As you saw in the mission statement, when we drafted that, like first thing we said is like this needs to be a safe space. Like before we talk about anything else, like this is a sensitive issue. I had one woman mention in a workshop to me that something that stuck with me, which was, I wish someone had told me that it's okay to ask questions about money. A lot of people that come to our workshops, like they've never talked about these topics before. They're quite worried about asking questions about money, or like that wasn't the culture that they grew up in. So it's making sure that we listen without judgment and we build these safe spaces where people feel seen, and then that's when we can really like start making change and bringing expertise and bringing a lot of knowledge. But yeah, making sure the safe aspect of the space.
Yeah, got it, got it. Thank you. That was informative. I think we have one question from a fellow, Blessing Tom. Would you like to be unmuted and then you can share the question with Christina. Uh,
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So I wanted to ask a question. You talked about how it was okay asking questions about money and asking questions that, like, especially if you're not uh, in a community where it's okay to ask questions about money and placing yourself in positions to fit like those type of opportunities, pertaining like scholarships, and especially if you have to place yourself, especially if you have to place your okay, especially if you have to place yourself in like a a situation where you're putting yourself first, like necessarily trying to get yourself out of like the situation that you're currently in. So it's more like, hey, um I want to, like, change my story or change my background or change like where I'm coming from. So it's like I'm not trying to make like people around me uncomfortable, but at the same time I'm not trying to necessarily be stuck where I am, like accepting what I've been giving. I just want to change my story. So that's why I'm following, like, necessarily I'm following the rules. I'm doing as I'm told, trying to get good grades. But then at the end of the day, I'm left by myself to, you know, make these choices. And especially when I'm not at like a financial advantage, you get what I mean? And coming from Africa, it's like, oh, it's like, and I'm black, so it's like, oh, the odds are already set, like not necessarily in my favor. So I'm just trying to, you know, I'm sorry, do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I think I get your question is how do you find the balance between you know pushing through some maybe conditions that are not in your favor
Yes.
in order to make sure that you make the right decisions
Yes.
for your future. I think that's how I'm interpreting your question, but let me know if
Yeah.
that's wrong.
Yeah.
Um, I'll say like one thing that really helped me, and maybe I brushed a little bit too fast over this, but um, I I learned in a lot of these places that I've been in that it's easier to do it when you have a community around you. So even when I was in Romania and I was applying for scholarships to live and study abroad, because I wasn't just able to go without a scholarship. I always thought, and was able to find other people that I could do this with, or that felt like a support system. And the
Okay.
same with feminists. And a lot of the things that we do is not, I mean, all these women have access to internet. Everyone can learn about financial education on their own. But what's super important is having that community that is making it so that you are checking in every week with each other or every month, and you are supporting each other so that you're actually progressing to those goals. So I'm a very big believer in the power of community and trying to find people around you that maybe have similar goals, and instead of treating them like competition, but treating them as, okay, let's work together towards this.
Okay, thank you. So
You're
you said
welcome.
to get a community. Thank you.
Find a couple people that have similar goals, and by consistency you're more likely to get closer to those goals.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you for the amazing answer. And so we do have one more question, like from our team. So your involvement in the youth empowerment began with your NGO, as you mentioned. So do you think that these early immersions into NGO and social impact stuff guided your future career paths? So right now you said you're in tech and financial stuff, and like do they somehow relate to each other? And also in the days where you enter the world of social impact and youth empowerment, what kept you motivated into continuing this path?
Yeah. I mean, I wish I would say that it led me to where I am in terms of my career. It's funny. So I remember this, my parents saying to me when I was younger, like, why do you do all of these things? Like, why are you doing this NGO? Why are you doing this and that? And I just, it's not like this is gonna take me to my next job. Like I never saw it like that. I saw it as this is giving me a lot of energy. So working on youth empowerment, like those are the people that I enjoy spending time with, initiatives that I enjoy spending time on developing. And I see quite a lot of impact. So I think it's not that led to my career. I think in funny ways it helped, but that was definitely not the intention along the way. So funny enough, the new job that I'm starting very soon, someone found my NGO, and that's how they found me initially. And then they reached out to me about the job. I mean, I didn't do the feminist NGO in order to get a job. But sometimes in life, like these things actually work quite naturally. And there is that synergy that you cannot control, oftentimes. I'd say I picked financial literacy as the topic of focus because I feel like I have more experience and knowledge because of my corporate job. So in that way, it's connected. But even now, as I'm moving into tech, I'm not going to change the topic of the NGO and the work that we do. Like that's going to stay as financial literacy and education because I'm now extremely passionate about it. Even if my area of, let's say, the day job has changed.
Cool. Yeah. So that answer was actually quite encouraging for me because right now I still don't really know what I want to do, like what kind of field I want to specialize in. So yeah, so like anything that could happen basically in life. That's wonderful. So we have a question from Mohammed Yahya bin Aslam. Would you like to kindly unmute and speak up, please? Thank you.
Hello, Christina. I have a question regarding the place I am from. Women are overly or solely dependent on their husbands, and it's a custom or say a norm. If something unfortunate happens, they become very vulnerable overnight. And I mean, these women don't even feel the need of becoming financially independent. Even their gold jewelry is a possession of their husbands, and they use religious basis to justify their control over women. Even I know many women doctor, their income directly goes to their husbands. So my question is how to knock sense in their minds that they need their financial independence.
Yeah, it's a very hard question. I think yeah, I think it's not where you're from, which I actually didn't catch. It's not the only place in the world. Like this is actually common at different scales in different parts of the world. So in Romania, like we did one study where we found out that 30% of women don't have any savings of their own. Um, and when we went deeper into that question and we asked, like, why is that? A lot of the answers are saying, like, oh, like we only have one bank account per family and it's in the man's name because he earns more and he should be trusted with the money. So it's challenging, and I think the financial education and financial literacy is a problem across the world, regardless of the development of the country that we're talking about or the region of the world. I've found that in the UK, where I am, so I considered a very developed country, and I still go sometimes to places where I get invited to speak about financial literacy and education, and realize that there's so much more that people need to learn. So it's if it makes you feel any better, it's not just where you are. On how to tackle this and what's the solution, I think what we found is that we want to start small and we want to start grassroots. So in Romania, we initially wanted to do like a full country campaign and run programs, and we realized like we're not going to reach any of the women that are at home, don't have any savings, are relying on their husbands. The way to reach them is to go into their communities and in a safe space invite them to be a part of learning. I don't think you can force people to learn about this, but I think you can very, very gently and sensitively create a space in which if they do have a question, they can come and they know that there's a resource out there. So we're now doing workshops, small group workshops, so like 10 people max in rural areas, because we want to create that sentiment of like, you can very safely come here and ask a question. Like, this is a space where no one's going to judge you if you come. And I think that's what we found works for us. So it's starting like small rather than like trying to do a countrywide campaign on it.
Right. So hopefully that answered your question. And again, this is quite general. Like I feel like we should always start small in our project and expand it later on. So we have a question from chat that asked, as a founder of Feminist, how did you navigate the challenges of advocating for gender equality in regions where social inclusivity is not always prioritized?
I think I like to answer this one by saying I think I'm in a lucky place. In Europe right now, there's a lot more attention going into this topic. I think there's other parts of the world where this is an even bigger struggle. That being said, in Romania is not the most progressive when it comes to gender equality. And one thing that I get asked over and over again is, why do you only focus on women? Why is financial education not for men as well? And I always say, like, no, it's not about that. Like, I think financial education is for everyone. And also, we've created an online platform that anyone can access. Doesn't matter gender or any other thing. It's just, it is in Romanian. So you have to be Romanian at the moment to access it. But other than that, it's a free online platform. Anyone can access it. The reason why we focused on women and underrepresented minorities is, and I don't want to talk about this again and again, but to create that small safe space, to make people comfortable, to make sure that they can talk about sensitive issues.
Okay, cool. So we also have another question from chat also asking, so from your background, you have secured so many international internships during your bachelor's. Can you please provide some guidance regarding that? What was your strategy about approaching the scholarships?
Sorry, so repeat that, for bachelor's or for master's?
During bachelor's, but I suppose it applies to like preferably bachelor's actually, because we're mostly bachelor's.
Yeah. I'll say, so my approach was not very sophisticated. My approach was, I looked for all the scholarships that were available and then I applied to all of them. I think I'll say something on scholarships and opportunities. Like, there's a lot out there, regardless of where you're from. Over time, I found more and more scholarships, opportunities, fellowships, and so on. There's endless number of them out there. I think it's important to find the ones and not apply blindly like I did initially, but actually find the ones that are most suited for you. And really think through about how those are going to change or impact your career if you do them. I did the 1-year master's in China because I was extremely interested in international relations, and I didn't get the chance to study that in my undergrad studies. But I was interested in learning Chinese. I don't think I would have gotten as much value from a scholarship in a university somewhere else for my master's if it wasn't like fully aligned with my interests. So it's finding those opportunities, narrowing them down, talking to people that have done it before. There's plenty of people out there. And don't be afraid to reach out to them on LinkedIn, because I get a lot of messages about the Schwarzman scholarship, and I always try to at least respond with some useful information, because people want to help others get into these scholarships. But yeah, just find the right ones. I don't think I've said anything truly groundbreaking on this question.
No, it's all good. So you resonate with I feel like many advices from entrepreneurs and stuff that suggest that people should narrow down and like tunnel vision, focus on the things that you want to do, the field of internships that you want to approach, rather than
Yeah.
going from, let's say, hotel management to some kind of like diamond analysis, like these kind of diverse things, which focus on your own field instead to maximize your success. I think the next question we can take from chat. This person raised up her hand. Alishba Malik. Sorry if I said your name wrongly, but could you please unmute and let us know your question, please? Also, preferably turn on the camera.
I don't think we can hear you, unfortunately.
We can get back to you later if you continue to raise up your hand and when your issue is fixed. But let's move on to another person that's raised up their hand. So let's see. Habibat Olatunde. Sorry again for your name, but could you introduce yourselves and let us know your question, please?
Good everyone. My name is Abiba. Can you hear me very well, David?
It's breaking up a bit, unfortunately. But let's try.
Oh. Okay, I'm going to my question in the chat box.
Okay, yes, we can
Sure.
answer from the chat box. Don't worry.
How about let's try Asiya Ibrahim. Would you like to unmute and let us know your question? And we'll move on to the question that Habiba posted in the chat afterwards. Whilst you're typing that.
Hey everyone. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, ma'am. Thank you for all the advices. Okay, basically what I wanted to ask is we as students, the fund sometimes we have issues with some money to execute projects. So what's your advice regarding that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Super happy to talk about this. So I'll say one, how I did it for feminists, and then I can talk more about like other ways that I've seen other people do a good job at this. For executing projects, I think there's two things. So one, we get a lot of sponsorships, and the sponsorships are not money. So we do a lot of events where we get the room for free. We often get one or two, let's say like a water company that's sponsoring some like beverages, and we get some snacks sponsored. Usually, like if you're not asking for money, a lot of the big companies are more willing to give some small sponsorship in terms of objects. That works much better if you're in a big city, where of course you have these companies that are around to give some sponsorship. The other way we've done it is we've applied to international grants. We've applied for some stuff in the European Union. We've also applied for stuff in the US and in Canada, and we've managed to get project grants from these places. I'd say like again, it's like finding scholarships. Like you really have to look. Like I've got someone on my team that basically their sole job is to look for opportunities and sponsorships and grants that we can apply to as an association, and making sure like we keep a list of that and making sure we apply for all the opportunities. So that's a short answer on. And then the other thing I'll say is like we've not needed as much money as I expected for a lot of the work that we do. Like now we have access to Zoom. We move things remote and online whenever we need to. We're going through like a period where we don't have that much money for the NGO and so on. And I will say like the last thing that I did was, because I'm trying to bring this resources to communities in Romania, I know there are a lot of Romanians that live abroad and have been able to get jobs like myself in a corporate world. So I'm starting a new program of donations where women that are successful in their careers, that are from Romania but living in London, can donate a very small amount every month, but that guarantees that we can continue running some of the programs in the communities in Romania through those donations monthly. And they're also mentoring some of the Romanian women in the local communities. So it's a very nice way, like me as a professional who's made it in the corporate job, like I would donate a little bit every month. And in that model, I'm helping the NGO and I'm also mentoring someone. So it's a very nice way to give back.
Thank you for the answer. We have another question, this time written in chat. What strategies would you use to ensure that advocacy efforts lead to sustainable institutional change rather than simply temporary awareness campaigns? So how do you scale up these campaigns?
It's finding partners in the institutions that make decisions. So I'll share a very, very short story on this. When I started Feminist, I went all for, I want to change the curriculum in the whole country and introduce financial education in every school. So that was the first mission statement that I came up with. Obviously, introducing a new subject in every school within a country is a very big undertaking. We're not very, like, we're very far from that. But I spent maybe the first 6 months drafting a report for the government, for the Romanian education government, and trying to convince them to introduce financial education in schools. Turns out they have no interest in this, and we absolutely failed at advocating for that change. Of course, it's a very hard change to implement because you're talking about the education system in a whole country of 20 million people. So we went back to the drawing board and we said, okay, how can we still make these changes while we're still working on introducing financial education in every school? We haven't given up on it, but we're going at it from different angles. So instead, we found 2 high schools, private high schools, so not public high schools, that decided to adopt the curriculum we developed. So we have now, they haven't started yet, but they're going to start the first pilot of financial education in schools in Romania. So our impact hasn't been yet to the point of the whole country now has financial education in schools, but we at least have 2 high schools that are introducing these curriculum. And then we can go back to the government and say, hey, last time you ignored us, we wanted to advocate for this. Now we have 2 pilots that have been successful in Romania. How about we start some more pilots in public schools? So finding those partners, and I've already got a few public schools that are interested in this, but finding those partners first, and then like making the change a bit more slowly, but hopefully then it's also going to stick to what we're trying to get to. And it takes time, and that's the reality of it.
Okay, so that also resembles what you said before about starting small. So even if you have such a grand vision, but you still need backing of like starting from a small scale, and then you need backing from the government or the high school, and then as people say, it's usually easy to make the second million after you make your first million. So it's the same theory here. Like it's easier to make more and
Exactly.
more as you start small. So we have another question also written in chat. Hi everyone, hope you are doing well. Thank you, Christina, for your presentation. Kabusi William from Makerere University, Uganda. Apologies for the pronunciations. My question is, have you ever had moments when you felt your efforts were going to waste, if ever? And if so, what encouraged you to keep going?
Yeah. I mean, I've had that in my personal life. I've had that in the NGO. The first time I applied for an internship in my third year of university in the US, it's very common to have an internship. I applied to 145 internships and I got rejected for every single one of them except for one. That last one that I actually got accepted onto and I ended up doing, it was so like at the end of the process that at that point, like I had thought, I'm just gonna stay at home for the summer and I'm not gonna work and we'll see what happens afterwards. But it just people like to see oh, you were so successful, you did an internship, but they don't see the like 144 rejections or no answer, even better, that you got before that. So I think it's reminding people of your failures or the things that didn't work out is super important because it's very easy to look at someone and say, oh, but life has been so nice and easy and you've gotten everything. It's like, well, you don't see the full picture for anyone. So it's what's kept me motivated. I think it's just a sense of like really needing to succeed, both in the NGO and in my personal life. Like I felt the urge of, okay, like there's no other option. Like I need to make it through this. Like it's not gonna be the path that I wanted, but like one way or another, like we're gonna make it there or close by. Or maybe somewhere else, but we're gonna keep going in a direction. With the NGO, I think big failure on the advocacy side that I just talked about. There's been a few other failures. Like we applied for a grant in Romania, which I thought we should have, very easily gotten because it was a grant that, in my opinion, was perfectly suited for us. Turns out they didn't think the same. So there's a lot of hoops that you go through. I'm always impressed that we got a grant in the US, but we couldn't get a grant in our own country. And sometimes some of these things are out of your control, and the criteria maybe are not what you understand perfectly. But yeah, it's just continuing down the path. Sometimes you lose hope, but you have nice people around you that are going to continue with you.
So we have a next question that's actually quite similar to this question, but not on an individual level. So it says, how do we drive projects in a community that shows little interest? So such as one that addresses minority. So, and in this case, how do we gather funding when like most of the community are not even involved?
This is a tough one because I think there's two options. They're not interested because this is not a need in the community, and that's when I think you should reassess the idea or look at it from a different angle. Or the community hasn't quite figured out that this is a problem indeed. So if it's the first case, so one of the things that I did when I started the NGO was I wanted to see organic interest before I put a lot of effort into building something. So I started an Instagram page and I just started posting like, hey, anyone interested in volunteering for this financial education NGO? And I wanted to gauge how much interest there is. When I saw people signing up to this, I was like, okay, I've proven to myself this is a need that people are interested in. I should continue down this path, even if we're gonna fail. But that doesn't mean that if I go to a community in Romania where women are not interested in financial literacy, that doesn't mean that the idea is wrong. It just means like I need to think of it from something that's relevant and important to them. So, for example, if I go into a community where maybe they don't want to talk about financial literacy, but they would like to talk more about how to save around the house, like save money on day-to-day things around the house, then that's the topic that I'll focus on. Or if I go to a different community where people are not really interested in investing, but they really want to learn how to negotiate their salaries, or like an adjacent topic, like I will focus on that. So try to find something that people are interested in and then build around that, keeping in mind the topic and the let's say like the center of what you're trying to develop.
Yeah, and just a bit from me about the question on how to drive a community that shows little interest. So if you guys recall in training session 2, we mentioned concepts like learning before serving, or like who are we serving. So, and also storytelling from like the upskilling session. So these are really important as well. You have to understand the market. You have to do thorough market research first, and then maybe if the community isn't actually what you are supposed to target, maybe, as Christina said, you should target the US, which is a much larger market instead of a small country. So you should humanize, and you can storytell in a better way so that you can drive the campaign more efficiently. So we're gonna wrap up this webinar, this lovely webinar, with one final question from chat. My question is regarding social entrepreneurship and international development. What are the top skills to possess for these fields?
I think that's a really hard question. I think there's not one answer to this. I think it's about finding something that you're really passionate and something that you really love working on and building on that. Key skills, if I were to say like what's really strong and what I've seen people do very well is being able to communicate. The storytelling piece that you just mentioned is extremely important, and being able to build relationships and understand what issue you're trying to solve, or what need you're trying to build around. So spending time on those things that are important before you even launch an initiative, or testing them as you're launching the initiative, I think it's super essential.
Cool. So thank you, Christina, for the answer. Would you have any concluding remarks you want to add, or?
I think just I'm super impressed with all the stuff. I've been trying to like read through the chat, and I know there's more questions that came up here. So if you have more questions, like please do reach out to me. I would love to answer all of your questions, because I know some of these are quite important, and I would have loved to have more time to go through them. But just keep going and keep doing the things you're doing. And I'm very excited to read more and hear more about the projects that you're developing.
Cool. So yeah, about that, Christina, if you would like, kindly, like, you can feel free to leave her any form of social media or LinkedIn profile or whatever, so that fellows can potentially also get in touch with you and ask questions or connect with you in for some other purposes.
Yeah.
And that's about it. So we're coming to an end to today's session. And remember that there will, as usual, to always be the Saturday upskilling and networking sessions this week. So tomorrow, I believe, for most of us, would be it's on justice. So like the complexity of justice, and also how do you apply justice, application of justice, so on. So once again, thank you, Christina, fellows, and also Team MCN for holding this lovely webinar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I've put my details in the chat. Please don't shy away from reaching out.